Alright, welcome back to another Built on a Budget. Today we are checking out the Serpent Society. Now this commander got a lot of traction when it came out for its ward ability, so a lot of people played into that and built it Proliferate or Infect. And I built it in another direction, so let's go check it out. But before we get into that, I just want to ask that you subscribe or leave a comment or leave a like on the video. Any engagement helps. It'll tell YouTube that you really like it. If you want to come back, subscribe. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. And if you have something you want to say, comment down below. If you have any suggestions for a future Built on a Budget video, also leave that in the comments and I will genuinely check it out. Alright, on to the commander. Now this commander is really funky. The Serpent Society is a colorless black-green legendary creature human snake villain. It's a 3/4 with Deathtouch and ward get 5 poison counters. Now the internet was flipping out about this when it happened. It also has other words. It says whenever another creature you control with Deathtouch dies, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature of their choice. Which means if you want to play this extremely oppressively, you can make it looping in effects with sack outlets so that nobody ever has any creatures on the board except for you. Pair that with Blood Artist or Zulaport Cutthroat or any other effects like that and you'll just slowly drain the table and they won't be able to do anything. Now that's toxic and also to an extent out of our budget, so we're not going in that direction. I played around with using cantrips like Altar's Reap and Deadly Dispute and those effects with Deathtouchers to try and get some kind of value or engine going, and it really doesn't play well. It doesn't seem fun either for anyone else at the table, so we're just going straight into Deathtouch aggro. Now we're going to go into the mana produce, starting with Llanowar Elves. It's pretty simple. It's a 1 mana 1/1 that taps for 1. If you've seen any of my videos with green in it, Llanowar Elves was probably in the build just because it's that good. We also have Sakura Tribuilder, which is a 2 mana 1/1 that sacks itself to go get a basic land and to play tapped. It has virtually the same effect as Rampant Growth. And speaking of Rampant Growth, we're running that too. It's a 2 mana sorcery that lets us search for a basic and put into play tapped. Pretty simple. We're also running Farseek, which will let us get a mountain, island, plains, or swamp into play tapped, but we can also get a forest if it's a dual land. So we're running cards like Vernal Fen, for example, that's in the deck list, spoiler alert, that we can grab with it, so we actually do get a forest out of it. We also have Cultivate, which is a really great card. Because our curve's a little wonky, it's hard to fit some ramp in sometimes, but we have Cultivate, which is a little higher up on that curve, but it'll get a land into play tapped and a land into our hand, which is incredible. And rounding out a particularly short ramp list, we have Noxious Newt and Nightshade Dryad. 1 taps for a colorless, and 1 taps for a green, which is really great, but they also have Deathtouch, which is very important, because if we don't want to use them for mana anymore, they also work in the aggro plan that we have cooking. Now let's talk about the Deathy Babies, the little tiny 1 mana 1/1 with Deathtouch that we got cooking in our deck. Starting off with Ankle Biter, just a Deathtoucher, as well as Fang of Shigeki. Hired Poisoner and Carver, also just 1 mana 1/1s with Deathtouch. Farika's Chosen and Tajru Blade Knight, also 1 mana 1/1 Deathtouchers. And we also have Typhoid Rats. Now we're going into some of the ones with special effects. We have Ambush Viper, which is 2 mana, but it has Flash. Ashnod lets us sack a creature when they attack in order to make a Power Stone token, but we don't care about the Power Stone tokens, but we do get to sack a Deathtoucher if we feel like it. Brazy Mouthful, we have Bilious Skull Dweller, which is another Deathtoucher, but it also has Toxic 1 on top of that. We also have Burog Banemaker, which has the ability to pump itself for 2 mana. Deadly Recluse is a Deathtoucher with Reach. Dragon Sniper is probably the best one. It's a 1 mana 1/1 Vigilance Reach Deathtouch. Crazy. Engine Rat has an activated ability to make people lose life for a ton of mana, but who knows, maybe it comes in handy eventually. Foulmire Knight, also pretty good. 3 mana Adventure on this 1 mana 1/1 Deathtoucher that makes us draw a card and lose a life if we're that desperate. Gnarlwood Dryad is another Deathtoucher, but it also gets +2/+2 if we have Delirium. Of course, we have the iconic Ophiomancer in there too, which makes a 1/1 snake every upkeep if we don't have one. So if we have a way to use it in a sack outlet, we can keep looping our commander's ability, which I don't know if we really want to be doing that because of for the sake of the gameplay table, but you know, it's pretty insane. Next up, a card from the set, we have Serpent Specialist, which is another 1 mana 1/1 Deathtoucher, but it has a power-up ability to put 2/1 counters on it. Vampire of the Moon is a 1 mana 1/1 Deathtoucher, but it also has a lifelink to boot, which can be pretty good in some instances. And rounding it out, we have Virulent Emissary, which is the same thing as every other creature, except whenever another creature enters, you gain a life. Let's jump into some removal now, starting with Assassin's Trophy, which destroys any permanent, but they get a basic land put into play tapped. We also have Bane of Progress, which is an insane board wipe for non-creatures, specifically artifacts and enchantments, but since we were mostly running creatures, that's not going to touch us at all. We have Beast Within, which is another great targeting permanent destruction ability, but they get a 3/3 beast. We also have Putrefy, which is a great artifact or creature removal spell. We also have 3 creature board wipes in the form of Deadly Tempest, which loses life to each player equal to the amount of creatures they lose. Final Act, which has multiple choices for destruction, creatures being one of them, but also planeswalkers, battles, graveyards, and counters, which is counter to our ability, but who knows, maybe it's useful. And we also have Nevin Earl's Disc, which is a slow board wipe that people can see coming, but it taps to destroy artifacts, creatures, and enchantments, which is great. Removal and ramp in this build has been pretty small compared to average, but that's mostly because 1, our commander has removal on it, and I wanted to avoid making it toxic with a ton of removal, and ramp because 21 cards in our deck are 1-drops, so that's pretty incredible. Now let's talk about some commander synergies, some cards that are really good working with our commander, starting with Arnon Deathbloom Botanist. Whenever a creature you control with power toughness 1 or less dies, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. A little bit of drain on the side, but also she has Deathtouch, which is incredible, works with our commander. Poison Tip Archer is also in this, another Deathtoucher with whenever another creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life, so we punish our opponents for destroying our Deathtouchers, making sure they get it. Unnatural Restoration is also up there because it returns a permanent from our graveyard to our hand, but it also proliferates, so if anybody got the poison counters from our commander, we'll just proliferate them. Victimize is also really good because it sacks one of our Deathtouchers to hopefully get 2 of them back if they died over the course of the game. Yahenni Undying Partisan. Whenever we sacrifice a creature, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature, and whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a 1/1 counter on Yahenni. So whenever we sack a Deathtoucher to Yahenni, they gain indestructible, and we put 3 1/1 counters on them because of all of the creatures our opponents are sacrificing. And last card in the category is Rise of the Dark Realms, which will let us get all of the creatures back from all graveyards that our opponents have been sacrificing or we've lost to aggro that are Deathtouchers over the course of the game. An insane finisher spell. High mana cost, but by the time we can pay it, it's going to be insanely useful. Now let's talk about drawing some cards. We did have some Altar's Reap effects in this deck, despite the fact that I said I took most of them out, and I really did. We have Altar's Reap, which is a 2-mana sack a creature, draw 2. Corrupt Conviction is a 1-mana sack a creature, draw 2. Deadly Dispute, 2-mana sack a creature, draw 2, create a treasure. Eviscerator's Insight, sack a creature, draw 2 for 2. Flashback for 5. We also have Village Rites, which is a 1-mana sack a creature, draw 2. Besides those, we also have Gix Yawgmoth Praetor. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of my opponents, they may lose a life to draw a card, which our opponents can draw cards off of this, sure, but we're going to be the ones benefiting the most. We also have Glissa Sunslayer, a Deathtoucher. When it deals combat damage, draw a card, lose a life, destroy target enchantment, or remove 3 counters from target permanent. Insane for drawing cards or destroying a permanent, but also because it has Deathtouch, it's 100% going to be getting in every turn. Harvester of Souls is also really good. Whenever another non-token creature dies, you may draw a card. This does not say you control, so if we sacrifice a Deathtoucher and our opponents all sacrifice a creature, that's 4 cards being drawn. We also have Midnight Reaper, which says whenever a non-token creature you control dies, this creature deals 1 damage to you and you draw a card, which we're going to hopefully be getting rid of Deathtouchers over the course of the game if we need to, so we'll be drawing cards off of that. And rounding out the category, we have Shadow Mysterious Assassin, a 3-mana 3/3 with Deathtouch, with when it deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice another non-land permanent. If you do, draw 2 cards, and each opponent loses life equals to their mana value. We're probably going to be sacrificing our Deathtouchers to this creature, but also if we sacrifice something bigger, we'll be able to ping our opponents for more. But we're also going to need to close out the game, so let's talk about ways to buff our creatures through that, starting with Beastmaster Ascension. Whenever a creature you control attacks, you may put a quest counter on it, and as long as there are 7 or more quest counters on it, creatures you control get +5/+5. So all of our Deathtouchers become 6/6s that are swinging for the fences. We also have Communal Brewing. Whenever it enters any number of target opponents, each draw a card. Put an ingredient counter on Communal Brewing, then put an ingredient counter on it for each card drawn this way. Whenever you cast a creature spell, that creature enters with X additional 1/1 counters on it, where X is the number of ingredient counters. So it's at least going to be 1, but with all of our opponents, hopefully it's 4, so our creatures are cast for 1, and then they end up being 5/5s by the end of it. We also have Drana, Liberator of Malakir. 3 mana, 2/3 flying first strike. Whenever she deals combat damage to a player, put a 1/1 counter on each attacking creature you control. She has first strike, which means if we swing all out, she'll hit first, putting counters on everything before normal combat damage, so everything gets buffed that turn before the damage. We also have Loyal Guardian, 5 mana trample 4/4 with Lieutenant. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. This doesn't require them to attack, so if we're scared that we're going to lose our board and we need to keep it, this guy just stays on board and will slowly grow our Deathtouchers until we're confident enough to attack. We're also running Thunderfoot Baloth. Trample 5/5. As long as you control your commander, Tramplefoot Baloth gets 2/2, and other creatures you control get 2/2 and have trample. So this will buff the team, but also trample is incredible because our Deathtouchers only have to assign 1 ping of damage to each blocker, so it'll guarantee we get through for combat damage even if we lose the creature along the way. We also have some effects like Overrun. Creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn for 5 mana. It's a good finisher to close out the game, but with trample, we're definitely getting damage through. Necropolis Regent is a 6 mana 6/5 flyer with whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put that many 1/1 counters on it. So hopefully with the Deathtouchers, we'll get exponentially bigger over the course of the game, and nobody's going to want to block for fear of losing the creature because of the buffs that we get from creatures dying. And rounding out the category, we have Mazurek, Crawl Death Priest. This card is amazing, maybe the best card in the deck. 5 mana, legendary creature, insect shaman with flying. It's a 2/2 with whenever a player sacrifices another permanent, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. This is insane with our Deathtouchers. If we sack 1 Deathtoucher, each opponent sacrifices a creature. That's 4 1/1 counters on all of our creatures. Absolutely insane. We'll close out the game in a heartbeat. And our last non-land category today is I Love Deathtouch, starting with Aveline Day Grand Prix. 2 green Deathtouch, 3/3. Whenever a creature you control with Deathtouch deals combat damage to a player, put that many 1/1 counters on it. Similar to Necropolis Regent for our Deathtouchers, it also has Disguise for black and a green. We also got Black Widow Deadly Hunter, a new card for 2 and a black, legendary creature, human assassin hero, 3/3 with Deathtouch. Whenever a creature you control with Deathtouch deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card and lose a life. This is for each Deathtoucher, so hopefully early game if we have this out, we'll be getting in for 1 because nobody wants to block a 1/1 Deathtoucher. Next up is Finn the Fangbearer, which works amazingly with our commander. 2 mana 1/3 legendary creature human warrior with Deathtouch, and whenever a creature you control with Deathtouch deals combat damage to a player, that player gets 2 poison counters. So on top of the damage we're dealing, we're slowly going to get them out with poison on top of that. We also have Hooded Blightfang, 3 mana 1/4 snake with Deathtouch. Whenever a creature you control with Deathtouch attacks, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. Whenever a creature you control with Deathtouch deals combat damage to a planeswalker, destroy that planeswalker. Incredible because it hits every opponent, so if we're swinging with a 1/1 Deathtoucher, each opponent's going to lose a life no matter what. And also over the course of the game, with all the Deathtouchers we have swinging, we're going to slowly drain our opponents for hopefully a ton of life. And rounding out the category, we have White Widow Yelena Belova. 2 mana 1/3 Deathtoucher. Whenever a creature you control with Deathtouch deals combat damage to a player, put a 1/1 counter on it. So we have a lot of growing happening with our Deathtouchers, and Yelena is such a good include in it. It's great in our curve. 1 mana 1/1 Deathtoucher on turn 1, turn 2 Yelena, turn 3 our commander. Incredible way to get up to it. Now let's talk about some non-basics. Starting with the generic ones, we got Command Tower, everyone knows it. Evolving Wilds as well. We have Exotic Orchard, so hopefully our colors will fix, as well as Terramorphic Expanse. Now getting into some other ones, we have Brim Backwoods, which is a colorless land, but it says 2 black-green taps, sacrifice a creature, draw a card. So if we need to get rid of our Deathtouchers in some way to clear our opponent's board, this is a great way to do it. Mortuary Mire says it enters the battlefield tapped, and when it does, put a creature from your graveyard on top of your library. So we'll be able to recurse some of our stuff over the course of the game. Temple of Malady is a dual land that enters tapped, and when it does, we scry 1. Vernal Fen is a dual land, like I mentioned earlier, Swamp Forest, that enters tapped unless you have 2 or more basic lands, another tango. And rounding it out, we have Viridescent Bog, which is a filter land. You pay 1 and tap it to add a black and a green. On top of that, we also have 12 forests and 14 swamps to make sure our deck functions properly. So that's about it. If you have any suggestions for a future build on a budget, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, or comment. Honestly, any engagement will help me out, reach out to more people, and encourage me to keep doing more of these. So that's about it. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.